working hard at a New York job making dough, but it made me blue. One day I was crying a lot, and so I decided to move to West Covina, California. Brand new pals and new career. It happens to be where Josh lives, but that's not why I'm here.
She's the crazy ex-girlfriend.
What? No, I'm not.
She's the crazy ex-girlfriend.
That's a sexist term.
She's the crazy ex-girlfriend.
Can you guys stop singing for just a second?
She's so broken inside.
The situation's a lot more nuanced than that.
C-R-A-Z-Y.
Okay, we get it.
Crazy ex-girlfriend.
Well, she does deserve it. This is one of the funniest pilots. And it's just so unusual, okay? This breaking into song, the whole musical comedy. Honestly, I don't know when I last saw something like this. When it really is unusual and bold.
Thank you.
And how did it come about? The show.
Yeah, well, I had been doing comedic music videos on my YouTube channel for quite some time, and I'd been otherwise kind of a working television writer, and I'd been doing live shows at the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater. But it came from those music videos that had been based on some of my live work, and one of them was featured on the website Jezebel, and Aline Brosh McKenna, who's a screenwriter, my co-creator of this, spoiler alert, was procrastinating, and she was on Jezebel. And she saw one of my music videos, and she realized that the same person who was in them and singing them was the same person who wrote them. And so I got an email saying, Aline Brosh McKenna wants to meet with you to discuss a potential musical television show with CBS. And it was crazy, because it came out of the blue.
You know, it's not really out of the blue in terms of, and it's something that one wants to impart to the students, because you know, Jonah Hill was here, and he kept saying, just do stuff, because this is how you get discovered. He was like a student, and on the weekend he went to some cafe, and he did little sketches, and he did them for a while, and they were like 2 minutes, and then they were like maybe 5 minutes, and you know, who was going to see it? And one day an agent came to see a relative or whatever, and was in the store, saw it, and signed them. So, you know, out of the blue, yes, but all that preparation that you did for the work before?
Sure. I mean, it's interesting, because the Jonah Hill story, I think that, yes, and he's incredibly talented, but Jonah Hill grew up like around a lot of industry people. I think his parents were kind of in the industry. He grew up in a very wealthy community, so he had those you know, access to those people discovering his sketches. And so I think that it's really important, in the same way people are like, oh my God, you're such a self-starter. Sure, yes, but there are so many people who also are making their own work who haven't had their own TV shows. And just before just before Aline emailed me, I had pitched 2 musical television shows that no one gave a fuck about. Like, no, people could not have cared less. So I have to believe that hard work and honing your craft work out and pan out, but you can't necessarily do it for that end goal, because that's just luck, and that's a lot of factors. You have to love the craft, and you have to love the work. And I remember reading an interview with Tina Fey where she talked about how the happiest time of her life was when she was just performing in Second City in Chicago, and she would swim in the river every morning, and she would go perform, and she was like, yeah, if I did that for the rest of my life, I would have been fine. And so I think that that's really important. I think in LA you meet some people who are so product, like they just want the end game. Yes. And it's like, just hone the process first, and you know, make connections in organic ways, but get good at your work first, and then see what happens. So I think that that's really important to emphasize, because I'm not the first person who thought of doing comedy music. I'm not the first person who decided to write and perform my own work. I'm not the first person who did a solo show. I was around a lot of people doing this, and they inspired me. And then I took it and ran with it in some unique ways. And I do credit myself with that. But I guess it's just important to emphasize, like, especially to students, that like focus on getting good first, and worry about the getting discovered and all of that. That will come, and when you're ready, you'll start researching how that happens, and it's a process. I mean, I had a manager. anyone can be a manager. You should know. Anyone can be a manager. Agents actually have to be accredited, which is why that they can actually get you jobs. But managers, technically, it's a whole legal thing we're dealing with the Writers Guild right now, actually. Managers cannot specifically get you jobs. They manage your career. So my first manager discovered me in a friend's internet sketch. I was 21, 22, and she was just like, "You're going to get me my beach house," which is a crazy thing to say.
God.
No, don't sign with someone who's saying that shit, because that is a
Yes.
hyperbolic, insane thing to say. And then she set me up with an agency meeting of an agent who was on the phone the whole time. And so between her and the agent, I thought, well, this is how the industry works. If people talk like they're in Hollywood and he doesn't give a shit. No, if people are actually good at their jobs, they want to take a meeting with you and they listen to you and they don't say, "You're going to give me my beach house." And this particular manager had me fly out to LA for 2 months to audition for pilot season. And I was like, this is my big break. Even though I'd never auditioned for film or TV, I was coming off of being a theater major, and I really didn't feel ready, but I was like, you know what? This is what I said I wanted. I'm going to be famous. She wanted to make me like a child star, because I was 21, 22 at the time, so she was sending me in for like teen heartthrob auditions. And I went in for this one, I probably was on the CW, like sci-fi audition called Betwixt, and I had terrible auditions, because I hadn't taken a class.
Right.
And so the second the feedback from the auditions was terrible, she dropped me like a hot rock. She was just like, "Never mind, you don't have it, kid." But just all that to say, like, there are a lot of weird potholes, and there are a lot of, you're gonna meet a lot of weird people, and you're gonna have a lot of false beginnings and a lot of false starts, and that's part of it. I mean, when I was in New York, I had an interview. God damn it. I had an interview for a movie, I'm just remembering this now, about like a journalist who was discovering the S&M scene. And my interview with the director was in a sex dungeon.
Oh my God.
And I went, because I wanted work. And it was fine. Nothing like Me Too-y happened. We just sat next to some harnesses. But I guess I just want to say, like, it can be a bumpy, unpredictable road, and I don't like the term luck, because luck implies like you didn't do any. What? Oh, really? Hello? There it goes back. I don't like the term luck, because luck does imply you didn't do anything. But I think that the term is like fortune. It's when hard work and meeting the right person at the right time intersect, and you can't plan for when that happens. When Aline sent me that email, basically, so I had 2 musical TV shows that no one cared about. I was making my own music videos online that were doing well. I decided to self-release an album, and Funny or Die was going to produce it, and then they backed out. So I released my own album on TuneCore called Please Love Me, and I'd made a series of music videos, and there was this one music video with Crack.com. The budget was $6,000 for this animated music video called a Historically Accurate Disney Princess Song, and that was the thing that Aline first saw. I personally...
What was it called?
Historically Accurate Disney Princess Song. And just, it's good for you guys to know it was a $6,000 budget when you see it. Animation's very hard to do for anything less than $15,000. Oh my God, someone's phone's going off. That's so embarrassing. I don't care. So I had released my own album, and I personally emailed websites that had featured my music videos before, being like, "Hi, I have a new album. Here's my new music video." And then I had my own album release concert that I want to say my reps didn't even come to, because they saw the musical comedy thing as separate from my TV writing career, because I'd pitched 2 musical television shows that no one cared about. And so when I got that email, it was out of the blue. I had no idea
Right.
anyone... I just thought it would be another way for me to slowly build my musical comedy career. I had, the intention was, and if my reps had contacted Aline Brosh McKenna saying, "Do you want to make a musical TV show with this person?" she would have been like, "What? Who are you?"
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
it has to be self-discovery. So I want to, I think that there is this like myth where it's like, you just gotta hustle, and like, it'll eventually happen, which is true, but like, you can't plan for it. And I think there's a story that Steven Spielberg waited outside a studio gate or something until they give him a job. if someone did that to me, I'd think they were weird. If someone was like waiting outside my house, I'd be like, I don't think that you're in a good mental place right now. I think we should get you some help. So I think that having a good social EQ with all of this is really, really important. And also when it comes to networking and meeting people, just finding that mix of people you earnestly want to hang out with and make art with without seeming like transparently like, I want to network. Like you can always tell when someone has like weird networking eyes. It's so scary and off-putting. I was working on a script. I wrote for the show Robot Chicken, and I was working on a script for Robot Chicken in an umami burger in the Valley, like, this is like 7 years ago. And a girl comes up to me, and I was just editing, and she was like, are you working on a script? And I was like, yeah, it's for, and I didn't even say it was for TV. I was like, it's for this thing that I'm writing. She's like, oh, so you're a writer? And I was like, yeah, but again, I'm just kind of doing I'm just kind of writing. And she goes, because I'm a writer, actor, producer, filmmaker. And I'm looking for other writer, producer, filmmakers because I have a pitch for HBO. And I was like, okay, all right. And I was like, so, well, are you looking for comedians? She's like, I am. I'm looking for comedians. And I was like, okay, have you checked out the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater? And she goes, what's that? And I went, oh, that's where like the comedians are, if you're looking for comedians. And I was like, so when's your HBO pitch? She's like, oh, my friend is an assistant there, and they said I can come in anytime. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna go back to my burger. So you don't want to be that person. I don't think anyone in that room is that person, but I just, it's just important. It's important for me to emphasize, like, it's really hard because when you are coming here from somewhere where no one else was in the industry and you had to fucking work 3 jobs to pay your way through the school, you're gonna have different connections than someone whose parents were agents at UTA, you know? And you are, and I think it's really important to acknowledge that privilege. And you can fight past it and you can work, but like the most important thing is to love the work. I don't think Jonah Hill's parents were agents at UTA. I just want to acknowledge that. I think he was vaguely rich, so I just want to acknowledge he was rich. Jonah was rich, and he lived here, and he went to Crossroads, and he was in the circle of entertainment people.
His father, I think, was a business manager.
Right. So look, it doesn't take away talent.
But
it's
he
just
went to some university, really not in LA, someplace back east, and he really did it in very, some cafe or something. Oh, at least that's the story he told me.
Here's the thing. Talent is talent.
Yes.
And if you're talented, it's undeniable. Ben Platt's father is Mark Platt, who's a hugely successful producer. Ben Platt is wildly talented.
Yes.
The two things can be simultaneously true. But I just think it's important to talk about.
Yes.
I got to go to NYU. I got to major in musical theater and be on a sketch comedy group in New York City with no student loans. That's coming at it from privilege. And I just think we should talk about that a little bit more. Not to hate on myself.
Yes.
I worked hard, but I think we should talk about it.
So, it's true. So once Aline said to you, like, listen, I'm interested in doing something with you, and preferably musical comedy and so on and so forth. What did it take to get to actually have a pilot?
Well, we got together and we said, what show do we want to create? In this blind date, she busted out a premise called Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, which was a movie she'd been wanting to write, which was kind of flipping the crazy ex trope on its head. And I said, that's amazing. Because all of the stuff that I'd been pitching was like show business related. And she was like, no one cares. No one cares about show business. No one wants to watch that.
Yeah.
What people care about is like emotion, what lends itself to a musical.
Yes.
And she was so right. I mean, that's the thing, is the reason my shows had failed is because they weren't an eighth as good of an idea as Crazy Ex-Girlfriend was. So Aline and I got together and we started writing, and we developed a pitch. We started writing and we started developing the show in June. We went out in September after going to West Covina together and spending a lot of time together and really immersing ourselves.
Which was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I think that she really taught me. I kind of had been coming from a world of sketch comedy where I came at things very premisey, and she really wanted to dig into Rebecca's character and talk about the character at first. And I learned a lot from her about it has to start from the character. Even if you have a great premise, you have to have a well-rounded character and know that character inside and out. and know thematically what you're trying to say inside and out, so you can really fight for the show. So we pitched to about 8 different places.
And by the way, the show is very relatable.
Thank you.
It really
I try.
is.
Yeah, when we
Yeah.
pitched it, everyone's been a crazy ex or had one, which is very true. So we pitched to 8 places, and CBS was our studio for only the big places, because originally it was going to be a CBS network show, or it was going to be a network show that CBS would be the studio, and then CBS said, well, if it's a network show, Rachel's an unknown, she might not get the lead that you're writing for her, she might have to audition for the show. And we were like, and I was like, I don't want to do that. And Aline goes, well, if it's a network show, you'll make more money. And I was like, I have very little money. Any amount of money is a lot of money to me. And Aline was like, well, I'm not doing this for the money. And so then we decided to pitch it to cable, which is weird that we ended up being a network show. So we pitched it to 8 cable places, and the places that were interested were Showtime, MTV, and FX. And Showtime offered a put pilot agreement, which is that they, if they didn't turn it into a pilot, they would pay us money. So we went with Showtime because that was very promising. We turned the pilot into Showtime. Let's see. So we sold it in October of 2013. Oh my God. We turned it in finally. We started to get notes around January 2014. We turned the pilot in, and then they spent 3 months trying to then attach a director. And it was only when they attached an impressive director they decided to make it a pilot. And so then when Mark Webb signed on and said he wanted to do it, instantly we were greenlit. Because we've been talking about other directors, but when Mark said yes, like Showtime immediately greenlit it.
What was the name of it? 28 Days of Summer or something?
500 Days of Summer.
500 Days.
28 Days Later is a very different movie. Although I would like to see 28 Days of Summer. I would pay good money for that sequel. Yeah, Zooey Deschanel is a zombie. That's really cool. So Mark was signed on in May, and we filmed it in October. Our budget was about $4.5 million, which was more than twice the amount that we had episodically. So we made it for Showtime. We felt very sure it was going to series until it wasn't. And so then we had a rejected pilot on our hands. I'm just telling you we had a rejected pilot on our hands. We had a half hour, and we resent it to all of the places, including the places that had wanted it before. No one wanted it. And Aline then she'd been watching Jane the Virgin. And Aline said, the CW is doing some really interesting stuff that doesn't feel networky. And CBS co-owns the CW. Do you want to just send it to them? And we'd have to make it. And she's like, we'd have to make it an hour. I was like, who cares?
Right.
Whatever, that's fine. So we had a great meeting with the CW. They said, well, we're considering it for mid-season. We didn't hold our breaths. Then we heard that the pilot pickups were happening, upfronts were starting to happen, and that CW didn't like any of their pilots that were coming in. So we filmed it in October 2014. This is April 2015. CW didn't like any of their pilots, and that we were being strongly considered for the fall, but they had some notes, which were these tiny tweaks. So we did the tiny tweaks, and the next day we got picked up to series. So it was crazy because we went from thinking I remember the day we got a bunch of rejections in one day for the filmed pilot, and I had just gotten married. I paid for my own wedding dress. We'd had a beautiful wedding. We wanted to buy a house, and I just remember being at home, like saying to my husband, I thought I was going to be a Showtime star and that we were going to be able to buy a house. And oh my God, I spent so much money on our wedding because I thought I was going to be a Showtime star. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm so broke. And so I went back to working at Robot Chicken, and I was at Robot Chicken when I found out we got picked up to series. And I had just had a sketch rejected that day in the room, because you get sketches approved or rejected, and we got ordered to series, and I was like, I quit! Bye! And those guys, I'm still really good friends with those guys, and they were just like, yep, goodbye, you go, go.
You made it. So let me ask you, though, about the videos that you did, because I saw the Ray Bradbury one.
Yeah, that was the first one.
Steve called me up and said, wanna hang out tonight. We could see an indie film or just grab a bite. I said, oh Steve, you're cute, but a movie's not what I need.
doesn't look like a flimsy little put together video. It looks very professional. And the question is, did you have who financed it other than, let's say, your parents and a crazy ex-boyfriend maybe?
No, I self-financed it, and it was cheaper than you'd think. So the location, I mean, this was just like luck. The location was an old Catholic school that had since been repurposed into an artistic space in New York. And I rented the whole school out for one day for $200, which was a donation. I don't know how this happened, and the school stopped letting shoots in shortly after the video film. That at the time, so the trend of internet sketch comedy had been kind of like gritty and grainy looking, and that was really started by The Landlord, which was the first Funny or Die sketch with Will Ferrell and the little girl.
Yes.
And so everything looked kind of grainy, and then people were just starting to make internet sketch that looked good. And my friends were involved with this production company called Landline TV in New York, which did a lot of pop culture parodies. So sometimes it was music videos, sometimes it was just sketches. But for the first time, I was seeing really good professional looking films come out of them. So when I wanted to make this music video, I thought I could maybe make it with Landline. And I ended up getting a lot of the crew. Landline didn't finance it, but I ended up getting a lot of the crew. And I mean, I paid Paul Briganti, who directed the video, I paid him, and he edited, he did the first edit too. I paid him $400 for the whole thing. I don't understand why they charged me this much. I don't understand why it was so cheap. The DP was this guy, Paul Rondeau, who's still a DP. He's an amazing DP, and I'd be working with him more if he didn't live in New York. I paid him $250, $300. He came with his own camera and his own lights. I mean, he was a one-stop shop, and that's just shot on Fuck Me Ray Bradbury was shot on a Canon 5D. It's a great camera. It was shot on a Canon 5D, and you'll see at one point I'm walking down a hallway, and there are these flashing lights. That's just two unpaid PAs doing with lights on a wheel. When you have a good-looking camera, and you have a cinematographer who knows what he's doing, you really can do anything. But also, I mean, people who are willing to be paid in pennies, which I never had those prices. Again, it was stunning. And I think people were doing me a solid because it was my first thing and I was self-financing it. And it's just, I mean, it was just working with a lot of talented people. And it was the first thing I produced, because for a while I saved money by self-producing, and I really learned how to produce on the go. And I'm still not an amazing producer. I get it done, but I'm still not great at it. And I mean, that first shoot day was it was a nightmare. I got to the shoot late. I'd been personally picking up the donuts. Like, I fucked up. I fucked up a bunch of things.
But the whole dance moves are organized. It was a very kind of a brainy, that whole concept was a very brainy music video.
Well, it's all about
brainy,
about the content.
Yes.
Yeah, it's all about the quality of the content. Like, I had been studying sketch at that point for 4 years, which is not a long time. I took a musical theater writing class at NYU. I'd been honing the song for quite some time. I'd been getting people's feedback on it. I honed the script for quite some time. So that's also why, I mean, I feel so behind the times now, because I started out doing YouTube, and now the idea of like doing YouTube or being a YouTube celebrity is a whole fucking different thing. I mean, towards right when Crazy X got ordered, when I was just kind of had a YouTube channel, I got a partnership with Maker Studios, which got bought by Disney, but they were like, we need to boost your views. You need to make a video once a week. And I was like, I can't. And they're like, but it could just be you like talking to a laptop, doing a character. I was like, that's just not what I do. I don't do that. And I know that's how you get big as a YouTube celebrity, but like, that's not my thing. And now, of course, like, you have Instagram for that. It's a whole other thing, but I was just always interested in doing like quality pieces that took a long time to do.
So let me ask you, because did you always know that you're going to the track of musical theater or musical comedy? Because obviously you have the talent for music, and you write your own songs, right? Mm-hmm. So did you ever think about, I'm going to be a singer, Or was it the track was always acting? Or did you believe from the beginning you can do both? Or did you think it was just going to be Broadway or what?
No, you're mimicking basically the debate I had in my head in college, which is I didn't know. I was a musical theater major, and I realized shortly, I was like, I don't like being a musical theater major. I felt outcast from the people. I mean, a lot of the people who... and the NYU musical theater program at the time was very big. There were 80 people just in my freshman class, so there wasn't a lot of personalization. The kids who knew each other had done the NYU summer program the year before, which I hadn't done, and so
Right.
there was already this kind of like what felt like a popular clique. And that's also my own shit. And I just like also, 18-year-old musical theater kids, myself included, aren't the easiest people to be around. So it's like you get in and everyone's just like, how high can you sing? And it's like, oh no, I've made a grave error. And you're busting your balls to like audition theoretically for these shows, and you're in New York and you're seeing what musicals are actually getting put up, and a lot of musical theaters is shit. And so I started to get very just disillusioned with musical theater, and I think also part of it was a fear thing because I came from being the shit in my high school and I went into NYU and suddenly I wasn't the shit anymore, and that was very threatening to me. So I think there were a bunch of factors.
Yes.
And then I got on this sketch comedy group, and for the first time I'd been on an improv group in high school, but I'd never said I want to be a comedian. So my whole life I'd said I wanted to be on Broadway, I want to be a big musical theater star, so I had all of these like loaded aspirations. With comedy, I didn't care if my sketches sucked. So it was the first time in my life that I truly worked my hardest at something and didn't care if I failed because I had no emotional stake in it. And I just fell in love with writing sketch comedy. And it was a sketch comedy group where we did a new sketch show every month. And so that's what I did for 4 years. I was simultaneously a theater major while doing sketch, and I remember sketch people at a certain point saying, when are you going to stop doing that stupid musical theater thing and just commit to comedy and start doing UCB classes? And same thing with musical theater teachers being like, well, you can't do comedy and theater, you really have to decide, and at a certain point you do, because if you want to do stand-up, that does, at a certain, you just, where do you want to spend your time? Do you want to be rehearsing at night or do you want to be in clubs at night? But I started to think maybe there was a way I could combine them, and I remember my friend showed me there's this singer Julie Brown who made comedic music videos in the 80s. One of them's called "Cause I'm a Blonde," and the other one is "The Homecoming Queen's Got a Gun," which is super dated if you watch it now. And it was the first time I'd seen a woman doing comedy songs, because I'd seen Mel Brooks. Like, I had the template of Mel Brooks, I had the template of Weird Al, I had the template of The Lonely Island and the digital shorts that they were doing, but they were all men, and the South Park guys. But it was the first time I saw a woman, and I thought, oh, I could be doing like comedic pop videos. Like pop videos, but funny. Because like it hadn't occurred to me until then.
No, because honestly, when I looked at the Ray Bradbury, I just said, this is like edgy music comedy. I think it was like brilliant and very unique.
Thank you.
And bold.
Thank you.
I'll repeat that. Anyway, I babbled too much, and we should open to the student because of them.
Hi, my name is Yunia.
You've done that a lot. Very well. Very good.
People cannot pronounce my name. First of all, I just want to say I grew up in Hong Kong, and what's crazy is I grew up watching Crazy Ex-Girlfriend on TV in Hong Kong.
Oh my God, grew up.
Yeah.
Wait.
Okay, maybe not grew up, but like I was like 16 watching that, like in my final years of high school, and like I was watching Crazy Ex-Girlfriend and being it's crazy. So it's like, whoa, cool, hi.
That's awesome.
But I just wanted to ask, so I'm an actress, and I'm also very much into directing, into producing, and into writing, and I'm having this issue where I keep being told that I need to do one thing, and I'm trying to figure out how to prove myself in terms of showing that I'm more than that. And I just wanted to know if you had any advice on that.
That's stupid. That's bullshit. You don't have to do one thing. It's possible to get good at all those things. You just got to work your ass off, which a lot of people do. First of all, I found it easy to go. You go where the gigs are. So if you get a gig directing something, that's what you're focusing on for the next bit. If you get a gig acting, that's what you're focusing on. If you just leave yourself open to all those opportunities, I find the opportunity or the job will kind of dictate you. I was an auditioning actor, but I was way more, I think partially because I was kind of a shit auditioner, I was way more successful as a writer in the start of my career. And so I was like, okay, I'm more of a writer right now. And you kind of feel it out. And then the second thing is, so many people now are directing shorts that they also write and star in. And so that's what you do. And you write your own short, and you get a really good AD to help you plan those shots. I mean, this is, literally what all these people, I'm sure there are many people in this room who can help you. You get an AD, you watch it, but you have a playback enabled. You watch a bit of playback, you make sure the frame is good. People do it all the time.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
My name's Chen. It's not just Chen, but Chen. So
my homecoming date was George Chen, so I have a fondness for Chens.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah, was it autobiographical, somewhat autobiographical?
It was not, but I did go to, I went to NYU with a guy named Jeff Chan, and I barely knew him, I swear, but he just directed Plus One. He's the director of that movie that just came out. So people think Jeff is the inspiration for Josh, and I swear I never dated Jeff. I barely knew him at NYU, but he started to just be like, yeah, she was obsessed with me, and I was like, take it, man. Take it, run. Anyway.
Oh yeah. So, what advice would you give to young writers? Like, I want to know, how did you get your first writing gig?
Yeah. So, I mean, like every story, there's no one story that's similar. For me, I had released this comedic music video online that was getting me some notice from agents and managers, and then in my back pocket I had a spec, not even original spec, I had a spec of 30 Rock that I had written to try out for the Nickelodeon Writers Fellowship, which I didn't even come close to getting it. But I had this spec in my back pocket, so between the video and that spec, when I got representation from the video, that spec got me, my new managers sent that spec to Fox Animation, and I had a general with Fox Animation, and at the time they were hiring for 2 animated shows, and I went and interviewed for both of them, and I got one. So that's kind of how it happened. I mean, I think that the biggest advice I have for writers is try to find ways to meet other writers, and for other people to see your writing. One, so that your work can literally get out there. Like I'm a performer too, so it's easier for me to get my work out there, be it live performance or on videos. But also that's how you'll get good at writing, is just, and I mean, you're a student here, I assume, so you're already doing it. But just get good at it, and then just try out for everything. Like, I found that trying to make deadlines for those fellowships and those writing programs, even if I didn't get them, they gave me hard goals and hard deadlines. I think most writers only work well with deadlines, where you're accountable to something. I just started writing a book today, and like, the only thing motivating me is like the guilt over the fact that I procrastinated on it for like a year and a half. But like, I said to the publisher, like, I need you to be angry at me if I don't make my deadline. Like, I need people beating down my door. So just find a way to make yourself accountable. I also give the advice of, if you have a script, set a date for you to sit with friends and read it as a round table.
Okay.
That way you have to have it finished by then.
Like joining a writer's group, maybe.
Yeah,
a good
yes,
choice.
anything. Like, my friends have a group called See What Sticks, where it's this program in LA where I bet anyone can join, where you just share stuff like once a week, and then they put it up in occasional cabarets. But I think there are writers groups like that all over, and you're just held accountable.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jose. Big fan since the show came out. I hope.
Thank you.
Okay, so my question is a little bit more thematic, I guess. I love musicals, and I love Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, and I want to know, and I love how Crazy Ex-Girlfriend makes fun of and pays homage to musicals. And basically, I wanted to ask, how did you and the writers like define that line between homage and subversion?
Yeah. It's a very inexact science, and a lot of it was like gut and emotion. I mean, a lot of it came from my own unironic love of musical theater, and then learning comedy and realizing that a lot of musical theater is like goofy or embarrassing, but still loving it. And so it was always that was more, it's just more instinctive, I have to say, like, because sometimes on the show we were straight up taking the piss out of things, and other times we were riding that line of an homage and a serious song. I mean, the song that we have right now that's Emmy-nominated, which is the antidepressant song, that was probably the most sincere song we've ever done, because we take the piss out of the genre a little, but it's mostly just sending it up. There's a joke about opening a pill bottle and there are tap shoes inside, and so I think it was just a gut thing. And I think that's like a lot of this stuff you'll find, like, sometimes it's just an inexact science, and that's okay. And that's why you just got to write a lot and feel it out. And art is subjective. It's by, not everyone is going to like what you do. I've heard of some people who watch Crazy Ex-Girlfriend who only watch the music videos online, and then I heard of some people who fast forward through the songs because they just like the plot. Art's fucking subjective. There are people in the world who don't like pizza.
Thank you very much.
Unexplained.
There are people who don't. If there are people who don't like pizza in Hamilton, I'm like, well, all right. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I know a couple people who don't like Hamilton. I'm like, okay. You know what? That makes me feel better. Art is subjective.
Hi, my name is Helena, and I'm sorry for anyone who hasn't seen the whole show, but my question is about the ending.
Sure.
It's nothing specific.
Cover your ears. It's been available for you to watch for quite some time.
Yeah.
So I mean,
it ended a while
cover
ago.
your ears. Are there people? I guess there's people tonight who've just watched the pilot. Oh, this ending's going to make no sense.
Yeah,
Great.
no, it's not really about the plot. It's more like, did you know the arc that you wanted for Rebecca since the beginning, or was it something that came out of during the years or later on?
We did. So when we pitched the show, Aline was always, because she was a screenwriter, she was always interested in doing, please sit. She was always interested in doing a 50, 60-hour movie. And so we pitched basically a 4-season show from the get-go, because that's how you'd structure a movie. You have Act 1, you have Act 2 split into 2 parts, then you have Act 3, which is the 4th season. And the last line of the show, which is, you can cover up your fucking ears if you don't want to, which is, this is a song I wrote. Okay, you can uncover now. That was in the pitch from the very beginning, because the whole point of the show was always, you can cover your ears again. The whole point of the show was always about someone finding out what actually makes them happy, not what they think should make them happy, and telling their own story. And it's the first tattoo I got was of the line right there. So, yeah.
You're very gutsy.
I got a tattoo, I know. It makes me really cool.
I love her.
Hey, my name is Sinopolo. You've already answered my question partially, but I'm just gonna go with it because I feel like I can squeeze out more.
Right.
What is your creativity process? Do you just write? Do you have to be inspired by something? Like, how do you get out of that back and forth procrastination and write?
I mean, I'm literally going through this right now because I just ended a job for 4 years where people were on my ass to write. You just gotta start. For me, staying in the house is death. I have to get out. I have to write in a coffee shop. I have to get somewhere. I go on walks to get inspired because, I think that when writing feels really fun, it's when it feels effortless, when you have like an idea and you're just like, but that's not always the way it is. And then often you'll come back to those ideas that felt effortless and you're like, this is a pile of garbage. And so you just gotta do it. But I find getting out of your house, getting out of if you're in a place that has a rut, just getting out of that space and going somewhere else really helps me. Getting your brain into a relaxed place. It's why sometimes I like to write in the bath, which I have a little bath caddy, and I'll put my laptop on it. If it falls in, it's not enough electricity to electrocute me. That's what I've been told. And like in the bath, it'll just like free me up, or I'll be taking a shower and I'll want to write something down. So I think that and I should do this more, walking around and carrying around a notebook and just talking to yourself and jotting down ideas and watching a lot of things too, watching movies and TV shows and music videos and live theater too, like just being in a place of generally wanting to be inspired. And I think being alone in your house is the opposite way to do that. And I'm saying this as much for myself right now because I'm in my house alone so much right now. And it's not good for me as a writer. So but it's hard.
Hi, I'm Danielle. I wanted to ask you first, how similar are you to Rachel Bloom? And
well, I hope I'm very similar.
I mean, you know what I mean. How similar are you to your character? And also, was there a struggle? I guess you mentioned having a lot of rejections for this idea, and was it ever like, how do you manage that meter of if something is working or not, and if you're okay with it getting a certain amount of success and it being a cult classic, or if you are always striving to have like the most success?
Yeah. Well, as far as Rebecca, I pretty emotionally similar, but she's very much a mix of me and my co-creator. You can sit down. Everyone has the like, should I stay at the mic thing? You have my permission to sit down.
Well, if they stay, they get actually filmed.
Oh. And this is the Academy for Film.
Yes.
So, okay, all right. So I'm emotionally similar to Rebecca. I think autobiographically, it got less and less and less so as the series went on. But a lot of those emotional reactions, especially in the pilot, are like, come from me. But really, Aline and I wrote the pilot together in a room, kind of improvising aloud to each other. So it's very much a mix of us, and then the character kind of became her own thing. As far as striving for success, I mean, well, all those rejections, if you know what you're doing is good because you've heard from, I mean, I don't know, we heard from enough people that it was good. We knew it was good. We saw the pilot. We knew it was good. And that's what's almost more frustrating about the industry and why I started making my own stuff is that you need these gatekeepers to make your shit. And a lot of times it has nothing to do with the quality of what you're doing. It's what do they want on their development slate, or what do they think this demographic wants at this particular time. And I've been in the room now I've been a non-writing producer on some shows that have been pitched out. And these shows are very good, and the pitches are very good, and they get rejected not because the pitch isn't good, but because it's not what we're looking for at this time, or we love you. Okay. I mean, you get that a lot. They loved you, and they would love to hear the next thing you have. And it's like, but how about this thing that I have? Yes. It's very frustrating. Every time I got a pass, whether or not it be the people that I'm kind of a non-writing producer on or my own project, I get a pass. I'm like, their stuff sucks. I'm like, I instantly just like, fuck that network. I hope they fail. I hope, just fuck them. I instantly like, I dead them until I have to inevitably go in, a week later for another pitch. That just helps me emotionally. And then as far as success, no, it's never enough. I mean, well, let me rephrase. I was very happy with Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, and that made me very fulfilled. And I turned down basically all work other than Crazy Ex for 4 years because I felt artistically fulfilled and also literally had no time. So I think there's something dangerous to the people who get the job they want and then they're still not happy, so they think, no, it'll be the next thing. And if you feel that, no, you need to work out your own stuff if you feel kind of chronically unfulfilled in that way. Or change careers. But I felt very fulfilled by Crazy Ex. What frustrated me was that we were a small show on a small network, and so we just, as far as pure prestige, could not compete with the streamers. I mean, our Emmy campaign is nothing. I mean, we can't have a Marvelous Mrs. Maisel Day where we basically like buy everyone a pedicure. Like we just can't do that. And it's such a champagne problem because I had a show, we have some fancy awards, we have some Emmy nominations, but I think that's what makes it really hard when you know the work you're doing is good and then you compare it to other shows that are getting more prestige. It makes you jealous in a way that feels really, really, really icky because I don't want to be jealous of other shows. I want to support other shows, and I especially want to support other shows that feature strong female characters. But, oh man, when you see like these billboards with all of these like fancy Netflix and Amazon shows, and the fact that like our cast never got nominated for a SAG award for ensemble, it's a champagne problem, but like I know my cast is the hardest working cast on television. So like things like that like burn a little bit because we were just on a smaller network. And again, super champagne problem, but it's something that I was routinely frustrated by, which is I wanted the best for the show, and we just didn't have the resources that some of these fancy cable places had.
My name is Polly, and I mean, we all heard you worked in New York and here, and I feel a couple of people have been in New York with me, actually, and we're about to graduate now, and we're at this place in time where it's like, do I go to New York or do I stay in LA? And I feel like as a person who's worked on both sides, I'm wondering what, if there was, which I'm pretty sure there was, what was the biggest difference you've noticed in the industry itself and putting your own work out there? And what would you give somebody on the way who's now about to graduate from college and has like a new starting point?
Well, I'll tell you why I moved here. So I wanted to do more comedy. I wanted to do TV writing or some form of comedy, and there are just more jobs here. There are more TV shows that wrote and still write in LA. New York has, they've gotten more writers' rooms, but at the time I moved here, it was like 30 Rock, The Daily Show, SNL, Colbert, and then some of the late night shows, and Girls wasn't even a thing yet, and I don't know where they wrote. So I came here for the opportunities. I think there are more production companies now in New York and places that write in New York and film in New York. But I don't know. I mean, that's really what it is. It was the opportunity. As far as like choosing a city, the fact that New York and LA are compared, it's really unfortunate because they're such different places. I mean, really, like, you really should be comparing places like New York and San Francisco and then LA and like Albuquerque. Like LA's not like a centralized city. It's a collection of neighborhoods. It's just so different. So New Yorkers who come to LA and shit on LA, it's like, yeah, it's not trying to be New York. It's a completely, and I grew up here, but always fetishized New York. And yeah, LA was really kind of came into its own post World War II. We don't have a lot of the old history here that New York City does. So I guess what I'm saying is, it's what do you want to do, and in your given field, where do you think there are more job opportunities? And then also, where are you happiest? I mean, there are some people who, Donalyn Champlin, who played Paul on my show, just moved back to New York. And there were so many TV opportunities for her here, but she was like, New York fucking makes me happy. I want to be there. I want to be back in New York. And there are still opportunities for her there. There are maybe fewer, but she weighed those and she decided on New York. So I think you can be successful in both places. You just have to weigh your options.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you about, like, as a person that is aspiring to be in comedy, how do you get over the line of, like, being afraid of not being pretty? Like,
being afraid of not being pretty?
Yeah, like, letting go of, like, being aware of how you look when performing.
Oh, interesting. Well, I was so inspired by the women that I saw and I came up through the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater, so that's not the only place in town to go. It's just where I came up. But I remember being, and still am so inspired by the women of UCB who are all look different, all shapes and sizes. Some wear a lot of makeup, some wear no makeup, and so funny is kind of that ultimate equalizer. So I think that a lot of the like worrying about being pretty stuff maybe comes from the outside, but I find that when you're actually studying comedy, it's not really a factor. On the surface, of course, obviously you have, I'm sure you have the improv teachers who subconsciously like favor the prettier girls because they want to ask them out, and it's creepy, and they're trying to do something about that. But I guess like my counter for you is, where have you felt the most that beauty or aesthetics is a factor in being funny for you?
I think it's not really in being funny. It's more in like when auditioning and when going for roles. You get hyper alert on how you look. And,
Sure.
And then when you're performing something, you're like, I feel uncomfortable about saying butt and farts and poops, because let's face it, it's funny, but it's not very ladylike.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the trend is going pretty against that. And if you're in rooms where they want you to be ladylike, leave. I guess all I can say to you is like, I would talk to like your friends or like a therapist to get past that type of thing. If that is inhibiting you, then that's something that's like personally inhibiting you, and that's something I think that's like an inner, very personal issue to work out, and that's something that's ingrained in our gender, trying to be ladylike. But I guess all I can say is, I think we're at a place now where we can officially say that like being ladylike is no longer a factor in anything that's good when you're auditioning. I don't think it is, and I think that, thank God for Bridesmaids. Like, I mean, really, like that, apparently Bridesmaids made everyone suddenly realize that women were funny, which we all knew, but like, it came out, and now there isn't that emphasis. And so I guess just trying to keep in mind that that's not as much a thing anymore. And if it is a thing, you don't want to work with those people anyway.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Antonio, and I wanted to ask you as an actor and a writer, along with the other writers in the show, how do you approach portraying a character with mental health issues without turning it into a caricature, as often media portrays it?
Coming at it from a first-person perspective and coming at it with empathy. We always came at the character from, I've had issues with anxiety and depression and elements of OCD, and so it was always coming at it from a very, very personal place. So we were never coming at it from a labeling, which is why the show is called Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, because that is inherently an inflammatory label, and the show is all about going beneath that. And some people didn't get the subtlety, which is a whole other thing. And then even when we weren't, when it was something that I hadn't experienced, just coming at it with empathy and understanding why a character is doing what they're doing, where a character's coming from, and if you can do that, and you can still do a joke as long as you understand where the joke is coming from. I think just, I don't know, empathy and understanding.
That's a good enough answer for me. Yeah. So.
My question is more for the writing process. It's kind of a follow-up question about something you said. You said that you wrote the show in 4 seasons, like a movie. How did you know that this is how you want to do it and not kind of like a movie just in 1 season? Because sometimes, most times, people watch the first season, then they say that second season is not as good, and then third season. How did you come about to take that risk of splitting it into 4 seasons and not doing just 1 and then coming up with second movie?
Oh, well, the show was always a finite plot about a point in a young woman's life, and once you reach the ending of that plot, your show is done. So either we wrote a movie or we did a show that would take up the amount of time that it felt right to. So I guess it just, I don't know, the structure was dictated by the content. And we wrote the show that we'd want to watch.
That's a good answer.
Yeah. I'm Mackenzie. I just wanted to ask, you said you had a 4-act structure, you had it all planned out. So I was wondering, not to spoil anything, how you handled unexpected changes such as what happened with Greg.
Yeah. You can cover your ears for this if you want to. Yeah, that was a real curveball. So we had the structure planned out. It was very much the first-person structure. There was a lot that we didn't have planned out. What we knew was it would be a story of, the first season was denial. The second season was, okay, we're in love now, obsession. The third season was spiraling. And the fourth season was redemption. So that was very first person. Yeah, I mean, so the actor who played Greg asked for a 1-year contract. We did it in good faith. Don't do that. Don't expect that an actor with a contract is gonna then like understand how the writing process works. That actor decided to leave because I think he wanted to be back in New York, which is his right. So we were only given on his end about 2.5 weeks to write him off the show.
Wow.
So when you watch that plot, that's just a little writing pad on the back that we really earned it. Yeah. Because it was any character other than Rebecca, we managed to work it in thematically. So that second season was about obsession over Josh Chan. So having that other character leave, it fucked with our how we wanted to do the series end. But it didn't necessarily fuck with like the arc of the season. And then Aline, who was the showrunner and very smartly said, we need another love interest to come in and fight Josh. And that's how we got the character of Nathaniel. And I mean, God, the show without Nathaniel, like what would that, I mean, he's such an important part of the show. And then of course, then when we realized, okay, we're in the 4th season, we're now coming back around to what we originally plotted, which is all these love interests coming back, because you wouldn't have the character Greg be as big as he was in the 1st season if he was just gonna like go away. Hence the recasting, and the recasting it from that meta level. And I actually love the way that it ended up working out, because we got to really explore what happens when someone earnestly changes and earnestly wants to change their life. And before Greg, original Greg had left, like he was a very flawed character, and so the idea of now having him come back as a viable love interest, it was an unexpected gift. So I think like viewing anything that happens, even if it's a pothole, as like an unexpected gift, and you're like, okay, let's pretend this is the choice we were always gonna make. How do we do this? It's like an improv scene. There are no mistakes. They're always just choices that you have to roll with.
Thank you.
So you got to do a musical, and I was just curious if there were any like characters or stories that you felt that you really got to explore in a different way that you wouldn't have gotten to if you had like a more traditional format.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's hard because the music element, even though it was a show that wasn't about someone in show business, ended up being very important. Again, spoiler alert, sorry, to the ending of this series. It ended up being kind of the whole point of the show. Had you never seen who this person really was inside, and the stuff that was bubbling up within her, you would have lost a lot of the comedy of the show, and then you would have never understood. I think the music numbers gave you a way in to not only Rebecca, but all of the other characters. And so even when they were we were doing these rom-com tropes, the musical numbers allowed us to really like get inside those and go past those.
Thank you.
Awesome, thank you.
I don't know about you, but I learned something new tonight, and I had fun learning it. So that's all I can say. And thank you very, very much for coming here and being so generous with the students and really putting a light into that process and what it takes and the mindset and what to be privileged about. That's
you.
Anyway, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.